You don't lose your worth when someone stops valuing you. They just lose their seat at your table. But here's the brutal truth. Most of us stay standing there waiting, begging them to sit back down. What if I told you the most powerful thing you could do is not to chase, not to fix, but to simply go silent and watch? I remember sitting across from someone I loved, someone I had built memories with, someone whose opinion I thought I couldn't live without. I was pouring out my heart, desperately trying to make them see me, really see me. But what broke me wasn't their words. It was their silence. It was the way their eyes drifted away, as if they had already left the room long before I ever walked in. It's a brutal kind of heartbreak. The moment you realize you are the only one still reaching, still caring, still fighting. It's like you're holding a rope with both hands, pulling with everything you've got, only to realize the rope has been cut on the other end. You're pulling on nothing. But you keep holding on because letting go feels like falling into an abyss. I spent so many days, maybe even years, in that space. Over-explaining, proving, justifying, twisting myself into smaller and smaller shapes so I could still fit into their shrinking circle of care. You start to wonder if maybe you're just not good enough. Maybe if you try harder. Maybe if you smile more, argue less, make yourself easier to love, maybe then they'll stay. Maybe then they'll value you again. But here's the thing. We panic when people stop valuing us because somewhere along the way, we started tying our worth to their attention. We started measuring our enoughness based on their capacity to care. And when they stop seeing us, we stop seeing ourselves. That's the trap. It's not just about losing a person. It's about losing our reflection. Because when someone we love doesn't value us anymore, it feels like we disappear too. But I've come to understand something through years of studying human behavior, through sitting with people in the thick of their heartbreak. The more we chase people who devalue us, the more we teach them that it's okay to devalue us. Every time we overextend, every time we explain for the 100th time why we matter, we're not just reaching, we're reinforcing. We're silently telling them, you can treat me this way. I'll still be here. It's not because we're weak, it's because we're terrified. We fear abandonment so deeply that we'd rather settle for crumbs than face the possibility of being alone at an empty table. But here's the trick that changed my life. Stop explaining. Just stop. Stop chasing, stop performing, stop filling the silence with justifications. Because silence isn't a punishment, it's a boundary. Silence isn't revenge, it's self-respect. When you stop trying to convince someone to value you, you open the door for you to start valuing you. And sometimes the loudest, most loving thing you can do is simply stand up from that table and walk away. Without slamming the door, without shouting, without tears streaming down your face, just a quiet, steady step toward yourself. The quiet terror that if we stop reaching out, if we stop trying, if we dare to go silent, we'll simply vanish from their mind like we were never really there to begin with. I've lived in that fear. I've sat with it at midnight when the urge to send a text felt unbearable. I've stared at my phone, crafting the perfect sentence, the perfect reason to stay relevant, to remind them I still existed. Because deep down, I believed that if I didn't keep showing up, if I didn't keep knocking, they'd forget me. I thought silence was a death sentence. I thought the only way to stay in someone's life was to fight for space in their memory. What no one told me is that this fear isn't just emotional, it's biological. Our brains are wired to crave connection. The human attachment system is so powerful that we will abandon ourselves just to avoid the sensation of being abandoned by someone else. We'll sacrifice our dignity to stay in someone's peripheral vision. We'll beg to be remembered, even by the very people who made us feel invisible in the first place. But here's what shook me when I started really studying human behavior. When you go silent, when you finally stop knocking on their door, the human brain doesn't move on as quickly as you think. In fact, psychology teaches us that the absence of something is felt more powerfully than its constant presence. And someone is used to you being there, explaining, checking in, trying, chasing. Your sudden silence doesn't go unnoticed. It creates a vacuum, a space. And humans are profoundly uncomfortable with emotional vacuums. It's called the withdrawal effect. When you remove yourself from someone's daily rhythm, their brain registers that absence more intensely than the noise you made while you were there. You don't need to beg to be remembered. You don't need to keep proving your presence. The mind is built to notice what's gone. The real tragedy is that we spend so much time trying not to be forgotten by people who already made us feel forgettable. We fight to stay in lives that never fully welcomed us. And here's where the fear really cracks open. We're not afraid of being forgotten by just anyone. We're afraid of being forgotten by someone whose love we thought defined us, someone whose validation we believed we needed to feel worthy. But you are not someone's afterthought. You are not a placeholder in their story. And you don't need to hustle for visibility in someone's life to prove that you matter. The simple truth is this: you don't have to scream to be heard. Sometimes, silence is the only language people finally understand. It's the quiet withdrawal of your energy, your time, your effort that rings the loudest in the corridors of their memory. And when they finally notice your absence, when they feel the ache of the space you left behind, you won't be standing there waiting for them to remember. You'll already be somewhere else, somewhere where you are valued, not as a fading memory, but as a living, breathing, irreplaceable presence. I remember being caught in this exhausting cycle with someone I cared about, a cycle where every conversation felt like a courtroom, and I was constantly on trial. I would spend hours, days, sometimes weeks, trying to explain how I deserved to be treated. As if, with just the right combination of words, the right tone, the right timing, I could convince them to see me, to respect me, to value me. It was like I was handing them the manual for how to love me, how to show up, how to be present. But no matter how many pages I added to that manual, they never seemed to read it. They never seemed to care. And yet, I stayed in that loop. I explained myself over and over, like a broken record. I thought, maybe if I say it differently this time, maybe if I approach it more gently, maybe if I try harder to make them understand, they'll finally get it. They'll finally choose me the way I've been choosing them. But what I didn't realize back then was that over-explaining wasn't just a habit, it was a survival mechanism. It was me trying to control what was ultimately outside of my control. It was me trying to manage their feelings, their choices, their willingness to value me. And in doing so, I slowly abandoned myself. I've since learned from psychology that over-explaining is often a trauma response. It's the echo of old wounds that taught us love is something we have to earn, something we have to justify, something that can be taken away if we don't keep performing perfectly. And it's deeper than we think. When we grew up having to justify our feelings, when we were dismissed or minimized, we internalized the silent message, "You are not enough unless you convince me you are." So we start to explain ourselves not just to the people who don't value us, but to everyone, to our partners, our friends, our bosses, even to strangers. We narrate our worth, We over-clarify our intentions. We beg for understanding because we are terrified of being misunderstood. We are terrified of being rejected without a fair trial. But here's what shook me when I finally stopped. People who truly value you don't need that level of explanation. They just get it. They just feel it. They honor you without needing a step-by-step guide on how to treat you well. And the people who require endless explanations, the ones who make you work so hard just to matter, they're not confused, they're comfortable. Comfortable knowing you'll keep bending. Comfortable knowing you'll keep justifying why you should be allowed to stay in their life. I discovered something called intermittent reinforcement in behavioral psychology. It's when someone gives you just enough kindness to keep you hooked, but pulls away just enough to keep you chasing. It creates a psychological addiction. You keep trying to win back their attention, thinking it's about your worth, when in fact it's about their control. It's a hard pill to swallow. You cannot convince someone to care. You cannot explain your way into being valued, and you cannot argue your way into being loved well. The simple trick? Stop explaining completely. Let your silence be the answer. Let your boundaries be the language you speak. Let your absence be your explanation. Because the truth is, if they wanted to, they would. If they truly valued you, they would show you without a script. Stop handing out blueprints on how to love. You, the right people, will build with you naturally. The wrong ones will expect you to construct the entire house and then question whether they even want to move in. You don't have to be a tour guide for your own worth. You just have to stand still long enough to see who actually chooses to walk beside you without needing a map. The hardest part isn't walking away, it's what comes after. People think the silence is the end, that once you stop chasing, once you stop explaining, the chapter closes. But no one tells you about the brutal, raw space that follows. The space where you sit with yourself, no distractions, no conversations, no apologies. To write, no text to send, just you, alone. And that's where most people crack. That's where I cracked. I thought I was ready to let go. I thought I had the strength to go silent. But sitting in that silence, facing the deep ache of being ignored, discarded, or devalued, it's terrifying. It's in that silence where you start asking yourself, did I make a mistake? Should I have tried harder? What if I'm not worth remembering? I remember pacing my room, picking up my phone, typing out long messages I never sent just to feel like I was still connected somehow. I would hold my breath, waiting for their name to light up my screen. I'd fantasize about their return, their sudden realization that I was worth more than the way they treated me. But here's the quiet truth. That moment, when you're sitting in the pit of your own loneliness, when you're fighting the urge to chase, that is the birthplace of courage. Psychologists call this distress tolerance, the ability to sit with painful feelings without running, without numbing, without rushing to fix them. Most of us don't fail at boundaries because we're weak. We fail because we can't stand the discomfort that comes with enforcing them. We think setting boundaries is the hardest part, but it's not. Holding them is. Holding the silence. Holding the ache. Sitting in the quiet grief that follows when you no longer reach for the person who doesn't reach for you. And I won't sugarcoat it. It's gonna feel like you're breaking. Every part of you will want to rush back, to fix it, to smooth it over, to settle for just a little bit of their attention, so you don't have to feel the sharp edges of your own abandonment. But here's where the shift happens. The longer you sit with that discomfort, the stronger you become. The longer you hold your silence, the more you realize you are capable of surviving the ache. You start to build an emotional muscle, a kind of quiet self-respect that doesn't scream, doesn't perform, doesn't beg. It just stands. It just holds. And eventually you begin to notice something miraculous. You don't miss them as much as you miss the version of you that believed you had to earn love. You grieve who you were when you thought you weren't enough. And slowly, the ache becomes a teacher. The silence becomes a sanctuary. You don't heal by avoiding pain, you heal by walking through it. You heal by proving to yourself that you can stand in the storm of your own longing and not abandon yourself this time. I learned that the real power isn't in who comes back or who notices you're gone. The real power is in who you become while you wait, who you choose to be when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when no one's texting back. The courage to sit in that discomfort changes you. It recalibrates you. It teaches you that you are not made of glass. You don't shatter that easily. And the longer you hold the line, the clearer the truth becomes. Your silence might break your heart for a while, but begging would have shattered your soul forever. There's something no one really prepares you for. What happens after the silence, after the aching, after the hours, days, maybe even months where you sat with your trembling hands, your unanswered questions, your untied endings? At first, the quiet feels like punishment, like exile, like you've been locked out of a life you desperately wanted to be part of. You wonder if you made the right choice to stop reaching. You wonder if you'll ever feel wanted again. There's this agonizing space where it seems like nothing is happening, but something is happening, but something is happening. Something beautiful, something that doesn't make a lot of noise, but changes everything. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, your attention begins to shift. At first, it's microscopic. You stop checking your phone as much. You stop watching their life from a distance, hoping for a crack in the wall. You start noticing other things. How the sunlight feels when it touches your skin, how your chest feels a little less heavy, how your own voice sounds when you're not bending it to keep the peace. And here's what's remarkable. The longer you stop pouring your energy into being valued by someone else, the more that energy starts flowing back to you. One day, you'll catch yourself laughing, and it won't be for show. It won't be an act to prove you're over it. It will be genuine. It will surprise you. One day, you'll walk past a place that used to haunt you, and you won't flinch. One day, you'll realize you haven't thought about them in days, maybe even weeks. And in that moment, you'll understand that you didn't just survive, you outgrew the space you were begging to belong to. It's a quiet shift, but it's life-altering. You start to become more protective of your energy. You begin to realize how valuable your time, your care, your attention truly are. You start asking harder questions before you give people access to you. Questions like, do they make me feel safe? Do they show up without being chased? Do I feel like I can be fully myself here? The thing is, we spend so much of our lives trying to be chosen. But what happens next, after the silence, is that you realize you are the one who gets to choose now. And this is where the whole story flips. The people who didn't value you may try to come back. They may sense the space you've created, the peace you've built, the quiet power you've stepped into, and they may knock. They may test the door. But the version of you that opens that door now is not the same person who once stood there begging. You don't return to prove a point. You don't re-engage to show them you've changed. You simply realize that their table was never worthy of your hunger in the first place. The beautiful shift is this. You stop fighting to be seen, and you start choosing where to be seen. You stop grasping for scraps, and you start sitting at your own table, where you are both the guest and the host. I think the most powerful thing we can ever do is not to walk away, not to let go, but to stay gone, to trust that what's meant for us will never require us to chase, perform, or explain our way into being valued. Because when you finally reach that place, when you realize you are no longer waiting to be called back, you'll find something far more beautiful than being wanted. So when someone doesn't value you anymore, try this simple trick. Go silent, not to punish them, but to finally hear yourself. And watch what happens next. Not to them, to you. Because the best plot twist is always the one where you finally choose yourself.